You're walking through a park today, sun on the grass, dogs everywhere, and something is missing. Not something you can name right away, just an absence sitting quietly at the edge of your attention. 20 or 30 years ago, that same walk would have ended differently. Somewhere on the lawn, you would have stepped around a small, chalky white pile, sun-bleached, brittle, almost glowing against the green grass, like a piece of bone china someone dropped and forgot about. You haven't thought about that pile in years, but once you start looking for it in your memory, something stranger happens. You realize you haven't actually seen one in years either. Where did all the white dog poop go? The real answer is far stranger than a fading memory. It isn't really a story about dogs at all. It's a story about chemistry, about marketing, and about the quiet, invisible way an entire generation changed its habits without ever holding a meeting about it. Let's go back. Picture a backyard in 1985. A dog trots across the lawn, does its business, and wanders off to chase a squirrel. Nobody follows behind with a bag. Nobody thinks twice. The pile simply stays there for days, sometimes for a week or more, depending on how often anyone bothered to mow. The sun bakes it. The rain rinses it. The moisture slowly disappears, and what's left behind dries into something pale, hard, and unmistakably white. Kids learned to spot it from 20 feet away. Lawn mowers learned to dread it. It was as much a fixture of childhood as scraped knees, static shock doorknobs, and the smell of a hot driveway in July. But why white? Why not just smaller and browner and drier? The answer is calcium, and the path that calcium took to get there says a lot about how little anyone was thinking about dog nutrition at the time. For most of the 20th century, commercial dog food leaned heavily on bone meal. It was cheap, it was abundant. It was an easy way to bulk up a bag of kibble without spending more money on actual meat. Dogs also ate far more table scraps back then, and table scraps often meant bones, real ones, cooked ones, straight off a dinner plate. Here's the twist almost nobody realized at the time. Cooking a bone doesn't make it safer for a dog to eat. It makes it more dangerous in one way and strangely more persistent in another. Heat changes the internal structure of bone, making it brittle and prone to splintering inside a dog's digestive tract. But heat also strips away the bone's natural flexibility in a way that makes the mineral content almost impossible for a dog's body to fully break down. So the calcium went in, and the calcium came right back out almost completely unchanged. Veterinary surgeon Graham Lewis has explained that this excess calcium would pass through a dog's system largely undigested, ending up in the stool as a chalky mineral residue. Once that stool sat exposed to sun and air for a few days, the softer, darker organic material broke down and washed away first. What remained behind was almost pure mineral, white, crumbly, durable enough to survive a weekend, a heat wave, and at least one accidental lawnmower encounter. Now here is where the story stops being about biology and starts being about something closer to anthropology. Sometime around the early 1990s, something shifted in how humans thought about their dogs. Pet food regulation tightened considerably. Nutritional science finally caught up with common sense, and bone meal stopped being treated as an acceptable filler. Dog food started getting formulated around actual digestibility, not just shelf life and manufacturing cost. As a direct result, dogs stopped absorbing the kind of massive surplus calcium their bodies could never use in the first place. Their stool composition changed at a chemical level across an entire species almost simultaneously, without a single dog ever knowing why its dinner had quietly gotten better. At the exact same moment, something else was changing, not in dogs, in us. Australian veterinarian Katrina Warren has pointed out that decades ago, pet waste simply sat outdoors for far longer than it does now because picking it up promptly wasn't yet a strong social expectation. A pile in someone's yard might wait there for days before anyone touched it, which gave it plenty of time to dry out, bleach in the sun, and turn that distinctive shade of white in the first place. But through the late 1980s and into the 1990s, a real cultural shift took hold across cities and suburbs alike. Pooper-scooper laws spread from one municipality to another. Dog parks adopted unspoken codes of etiquette. Owning a dog quietly came bundled with a new social duty that hadn't existed quite the same way before. Clean up immediately and clean up thoroughly. This wasn't just a vague cultural mood either. It had a starting point you can actually point to on a calendar. New York City passed its canine waste law in 1978, often nicknamed the Pooper Scooper Law, requiring owners to immediately clean up after their dogs in public spaces. Other cities watched, hesitated, and then followed, one after another, through the late 70s and into the 80s. What started as a single piece of municipal legislation slowly hardened into something much bigger, a norm, an expectation so deeply absorbed that within a generation, almost nobody questioned it anymore. Owning a dog and not cleaning up after it went from unremarkable to almost unthinkable. Layer that shift on top of the changing chemistry happening inside dog food bags at the exact same time, and you get something close to a perfect storm. Two completely unrelated systems, one regulatory and cultural, one nutritional and biological, moving in the same direction at the same moment in history for entirely different reasons, with nobody coordinating either change with the other. So two invisible forces collided at almost the same point in history. Dogs were producing far less of that white mineral residue to begin with, and humans were giving whatever residue remained far less time to ever fully appear. Neither force alone would have made white dog poop disappear completely. Together, within the span of roughly one generation, they erased it almost entirely, and almost nobody noticed it happening in real time. That's the part worth sitting with for a moment. This is something your brain does constantly, and you are almost never consciously aware of it while it's underway. Researchers studying memory and perception describe a related phenomenon sometimes called shifting baseline syndrome, where each generation quietly recalibrates what counts as normal, using only the world it grew up in as the reference point. You don't notice gradual change while it's happening around you. You only notice it later, retroactively, when an old memory surfaces and the present suddenly fails to match it. It's the same mental blind spot behind why people swear summers used to last longer, why a song that seemed to play constantly on the radio appears to have vanished overnight, when really it just slowly stopped getting airplay, one station at a time, until one day it simply wasn't there anymore and nobody clocked the exact moment it left. White dog poop disappeared the same way, not in one dramatic year, not with any kind of announcement. It thinned out slowly, yard by yard, decade by decade, until an entire visual fixture of childhood quietly slipped out of the world, while everyone was busy looking at something else. Here's where the story gets even stranger. Veterinarians who study canine digestive health, including DVM, and gastroenterology specialist Albert Juergens, note that white or unusually pale stool in a dog today is treated very differently than it once was. It's no longer dismissed as an old-fashioned side effect of diet. It's now flagged as a potential warning sign for liver dysfunction, bile duct obstruction, or pancreatic disease. The exact same chalky color that used to simply mean this dog ate a lot of bone meal can now mean something serious enough to warrant an emergency vet visit. Think about what that actually means for a second. The exact same visual signal meant almost nothing in 1988. The exact same visual signal can mean something urgent in 2026. The underlying chemistry of calcium hasn't changed at all. What changed is the baseline surrounding it. Context quietly rewired the meaning attached to the exact same white pile sitting in the exact same patch of grass. That's not really a story about dogs anymore. That's a story about you. You do this constantly, with things far more consequential than lawn debris. The behaviors you consider perfectly normal right now, the foods you eat without a second thought, the habits nobody around you questions yet. Every one of them is sitting on top of a baseline that's already quietly shifting beneath your feet. Something is changing right now, today, in plain sight, that a future version of you will eventually look back on and wonder how an entire generation managed not to notice. Think about how often this exact pattern repeats itself across an entire lifetime. The toy you assumed every kid grew up with until you mention it to someone 10 years younger and watch them stare back blankly. The phone number you used to know by heart back when memorizing one was simply what you did, before an entire skill quietly became obsolete. The specific, familiar smell of a video store, a skill you no longer need, a sound your childhood home used to make that you can still hear perfectly in your head, even though the house itself doesn't make that sound anymore. None of these things ended with a headline. They just thinned out. The same way the white pile on the lawn thinned out until one ordinary day became the last day, and nobody happened to be paying close enough attention to notice it pass. You won't notice it happening either. That's the uncomfortable part worth sitting with. Just like nobody woke up one specific morning in the mid-1990s and announced collectively that today was the day white dog poop officially ended. It simply thinned out, 1 yard at a time, one improved bag of kibble at a time, one picked up pile at a time, until it stopped being a Tuesday and became a memory instead. So the next time you take a walk and something about the world feels slightly different than you remember it, slightly quieter, slightly more absent, don't assume your memory is playing tricks on you. Ask what actually changed underneath you. Ask what tiny, boring, unglamorous shift, repeated across millions of ordinary moments, quietly rewired the world without ever once asking for your permission. You're walking through a park today, sun on the grass, dogs everywhere, and the world has already changed again. You just haven't noticed yet. So the next time you take a walk and something about the world feels slightly different than you remember it, slightly quieter, slightly more absent, don't assume your memory is playing tricks on you. Ask what actually changed underneath you. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, what's one thing from your childhood that has completely disappeared from the world and almost nobody talks about it? Maybe it's the smell of a certain toy, the sound of a rotary phone, the taste of a specific candy, or something even more random. I read every comment and I'm genuinely curious what baselines you have watched shift. If you enjoyed peeling back this tiny weird layer of reality with me today, subscribe. There are dozens more of these quiet, forgotten changes hiding in plain sight, and we're only getting started uncovering them. See you in the next one, before that one disappears too.